that was built. But then blocking off any of the residential areas, I think goes against the, I believe I saw in the Aurora town plan that, the idea for communities, for families to be able to live and appreciate that area. So if we close that off, then why bother? So yes, we can agree that the animals, the wildlife can be, have a corridor where they can hopefully survive. But closing that off from the community seems counterintuitive to me. I really hope that Aurorans can walk on the trails and discover the wildlife and not have everything displaced to areas that don't have development. So I hope that you'll take this into consideration when you're looking at this application and see if there are alternatives. I'm not looking for, complete rejection of anything. It's just, can we consider some more viable options that are satisfactory to the applicant as well as to the residents of the community? And please keep in mind that this community is now established. It's not the same as a brand new development. And it's the same thing for the animals and the waterfowl that have established themselves. We are displacing species that are now inhabiting that area. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to close this portion of the public meeting. I will ask members of council if they have any questions for the proponent. Pressing your buttons, Councillor Eval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Given, for attending. And as long as I've been on council, I'm quite aware of all the developments you've been doing. And I do appreciate the thought and the collaboration going into the wildlife park. You did mention that if we wanted to talk to you about purchasing a part of that parcel that we have identified or has been identified, could we do that in a timely fashion and get back to you very quickly with a yes or no?
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll table something when we get it to the council part.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Ewan, for joining us. So similar to what Councillor Abel was saying, there's that one parcel that I believe the residents and myself concerned as well. I mean, you have a right. It's official plan, absolutely. Hear you loud and clear, and you own the land and representing the developer. That little parcel there with the 3 homes on the one side that's actually blocking what other residents is, and Councillor Abel, I don't know if it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, but is that a negotiable thing, or is it the whole parcel of land? Or is that appropriate even to ask right here? Because you don't have to answer that if that's not appropriate.
I think if we're going to get into that, I'd rather not do it in an open forum.
Okay, perfect. So that's fair. The other question I had for you, would you still feel that there's room to speak with the residents and yourself to take a look at the existing plan that you have before us? And is there any negotiation in terms of the layout? If there's any further options in terms of allowing the corridor for the wildlife and the stormwater ponds to be more accessible for residents and for wildlife. Is there an opportunity to continue to look at this configuration with the residents at this point?
We're happy to sit down and talk to the residents too and see if there's any meeting of the minds. It sounds like they want those 3 lots at the end though to be removed. And that would be what I would call, if you do that, then you're basically asking us to give up something that I believe there's an entitlement to. Okay. And that would have to be compensated. If you want to park there, there's a way to acquire it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I think that's it for you. Thank you.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Givens, for presenting this evening. Can we assume that given the new plans that are here before us, that the builders that you represent believe that this is the final draft or plan, or is there more flexibility?
Mr. Given?
The attitude my clients have is that they're looking for a solution, so certainly there's some flexibility, but I don't know how much. We're not here to pick a fight. We're trying to find a solution.
Thank you. And one of the thoughts that I had, and which one of the residents stated earlier or asked earlier, is it feasible to move lots 1, 2, and 3, or those 3 homes at the end of the cul-de-sac there, if you move it towards the south, allowing more of an opening on the northeast side of the stormwater pond, is that a realistic option?
And the lands that would be freed up, you would expect to be just conveyed?
Well, in the plan here, it looks like you've conveyed about 20 meters worth.
Yes.
So what I'm thinking about is filling up that 20 meters gap and put that 20 meters on the other side. So
There
just
is-
sliding everything over to the south.
Yeah, we can look at that, but I think there's a depth issue there where we would start to run out of the suitable depth for residential lots. I think it would cause a reduction in the yield.
Okay, because you need that setback from the park.
That's right.
Okay.
Councillor?
I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers, questions for Mr. Given, please? Seeing none, I'll close this portion of the public meeting. If someone will please put the report on the floor for me. Are you moving the report, Councillor Abel? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Abel? Councillor Abel?
Mr. Mayor, I think we should think about acquiring that land. We are fast-tracking spending of the hydro fund, and I think this is an appropriate use for the hydro fund. It's a legacy. So I would I would move that we go into negotiations. We're familiar with the land and the
Okay, well, that's not
zoning.
appropriate to this. Sorry.
How would I go about that, Mr. Mayor?
Notice a motion to council.
Notice a motion. That'll take a bit more time. I was under the impression, I was trying to give Mr. Given the impression we would move quickly. Well, then I'm all in favor of working with the developer. How would if I approve this, Mr. Mayor, then I'm not allowing for that negotiation. Would that be a fair question? Because we've already made up our mind. Is that
No, it gives the next step. If we approve the motion that's on the floor, is to go to general committee.
It'll go to general committee. So before it goes to general committee, I can make that notice of motion. Okay, that's what I'll do then.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things from the residents, and I support Councillor Abel's idea, but that'll come in the future as an option to some understanding what that entails, and from that perspective. But I was just wondering, through Mr. Ramuno, if we could set up perhaps a discussion between the residents and the developer, if you can help with that, because I do believe there's an opportunity to listen to some of the ideas, see if the developer has an appetite to look at the configuration, if there's anything we can do to help with some of the suggestions we heard tonight. I think it would be very fair. It also provides a good relationship between the developer and the residents. This is a big change for the area. And by the way, I'm very familiar with the area. I love the wild park and wildlife park that David worked really hard for. But there's all kinds of reasons why things happen the way they did. And if you want to give us a call, we'll tell you a little bit more about that. But in terms of if we can have that, I think that would really help. Just if there's anything further that can be done with that one specific area. It's a benefit to the entire town if that can be adjusted, or other things that we can do. The other question I had, and I think, sorry, where to write down. I think you mentioned it, Mr. Ramuno, if construction moves forward and things go along, we'll have a hotline set up for the residents, ease of providing concerns to you, back to you, and so that there's a real smooth process there. We have that happening a lot, so don't be too worried. We've got a great response team on some big developments that are happening, so that we make sure that everything's clear. And I think that's it for me right now. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, it says in the report that while the town has indicated that there is no need for parkland in this area, that the developers offered cash in lieu, but is that a decision that the town could revisit? At the end of the day, is it our choice whether we want parkland or cash in lieu?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, with respect to securing parkland as part of the development, but it would be at the rate established in the Planning Act. So it would be a 5% rate, essentially.
And I understand that. But I do, share some of the comments with the residents have come out that some of the concerns center around units 1, 2, and 3, and is it a possibility to shift those over? Certainly, if the town didn't want to take cash in lieu, we could ask for a park to be in that spot and then see what else can be done to open up that vista a little bit and certainly try and address it. I know that it's the parkland based on the dedication formula is less than that total area, but at least it's a start. That's a comment for now.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The comment about parkland was for the 2B and 2C area, I believe. In the 2Bs, we're not plush in parkland. Do we count the wildlife park as parkland? Because it's land that is really not, we're really not supposed to be going in there as human beings. It's a nesting and habitat.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the wildlife lands are not factored in as part of our parkland. It's really just the parkettes, our parks, neighborhood parks, and we do have a number of those, within 2B and 2C. So I think Mr. Given's correct with the between both communities is well over the minimum requirement in the Planning Act. It's more than 5%. It's closer to 7%. I know in the 2C area we exceeded the requirements of the Planning Act in securing parkland.
Thank you. We are talking about the 2Bs here, though, not the 2Cs, correct? So with the plan the way it is, the opening, it's called Vista, but there was talk about trails and valley lands. Is that actually part of the wildlife park, or are we going to be having trails adjacent to the wildlife park? Because my understanding was that we weren't.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I mean, the application before us this evening, the 25 lots, all the environmental lands, the buffer area, those lands were all secured previously as part of the 2B developments. So when we speak about the trail, there is a proposed walkway within this plan that's been identified between lots 18 and 17. So it's a walkway through the south. There is an easement, a servicing easement between lots 6 and 7. But the other connection is the addition of that Vista open space block at the north end of that cul-de-sac bulb. And that would be, as proposed, that would be an open space or a park block that would be conveyed as part of this development to the municipality, and we would become owners of that Vista open space block.
Councillor?
What I'm trying to understand, or to clarify in my understanding, is that this was not to be an area that was going to be used by humans. There were going to be vistas where we could look at the wildlife, we could have binoculars, but we weren't going to be walking in this area. Am I correct on that?
Mr. Romano?
My apologies. You're referring to the actual
Yes,
the park
thank
itself.
you.
I mean, that's my understanding. I mean, the access into that area was limited. I don't have, my apologies, I don't have that trail plan in front of me. There are a number of trails. I mean, the wildlife park is that linear open space system that runs north and south between Wellington north to St. John's. I don't have the trail plan in front of me, but there were limited trail connections within this area, but there are some. I just don't have that in front of me. I can provide that to council, though.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, and the buffer, sorry, I didn't do through you, Mr. Mayor, to the last question. With respect to buffer areas, those are areas that buffer the wildlife park, so we're not supposed to be in those areas either. There's not supposed to be trails in those areas either.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, that is the intent to leave those in their open natural state. Having said that, though, we do have quite a significant trail network system, and in some areas we do have trails running through some buffer areas and some environmental protection areas.
Thank you. At the end of the day, this is a wildlife park, and we need to do everything that we can and should do to maintain the intent of the wildlife park. With respect to the construction vehicles, the parking of construction vehicles, especially on River Ridge Boulevard and McClarty, we do have trouble with parking of construction vehicles. I mean, there's only so much space, and there are a lot of vehicles that have to be there. So if there was a hotline, or will be a hotline for the residents, what would they be able to do about the construction vehicles, and especially if they felt there was safety issues?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we do with when we're working with developers and establishing a management plan is we identify points of access for construction vehicles. Obviously, in this instance, it's really limited to, for the most part, River Ridge Road. So we would work with the developer to identify that access point. There would without question, there would be construction activity along River Ridge Road during that construction period. But to our best of our ability, we control and limit the amount of disturbance. But there would be construction activity during that period, and council is aware of our construction activity hours, essentially 7 to 7, Monday through Saturday. But we have had some success with our hotline with other developers in addressing residents' concerns as they come up with respect to, undue noise and work after hours, and just keeping the managing parking as well as garbage and debris.
Thank you. Last question, I think. Could you speak on mitigating the impact on the neighborhood and flora, fauna, with respect to dust, etc.?
Sir.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, as part of any construction activity, one of the first things that that occurs is we have a plan in place. They'll have the proper fencing, silt fencing that would have to be constructed before they do any work to try and control dust, not only into the existing residential areas, but obviously dust and debris and erosion of soil into the valley system. So that's a condition of development that we enter into with and require each developer to undertake.
Thank you. And that would have to be done to this town's satisfaction before the developer could begin work?
That's correct.
Including grading work?
Correct.
Thank you. And this is the last question. Protection of tree groupings on existing lands. And is there going to be an arborist in this mix to determine?
Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, if they haven't already submitted one, I don't think there is some vegetation there, but that is a requirement as well, environmental reports and an arborist report and tree inventory report to identify any trees that are required to be preserved.
Thank you very much.
And again, tree compensation plan
Yes,
as
thank
well.
you.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd just take this opportunity to just answer a couple of the questions that the residents had, because I know Mr. Rumuno, he doesn't realize how sophisticated he is in his technical jargon that I thought that maybe I'd help clarify. I think it was, sorry for misstating your name, Mr. Cha from From 63 Tonner, you mentioned, this was green space. Why are the developers building now? And I think what will help that question is on page 12 of the public planning meeting agenda. You'll see that the square, the zone just underneath the stormwater pond is zoned R3. And an R3 zone is actually wider in dimensions than the current homes that are in the adjacent current neighborhood. So that's the current zoning. So it is zoned as an R3, which is buildable. And the one that's backing onto Kane, R4, that's slightly less. You're probably looking at 36 to 40-foot wide blocks, but that's also developable land, and so that is currently zoned the R4. And the only, I guess, you talked about exception is the rural zone, which is the large part of that SPID area. And rural zone, from my understanding, is essentially like a placeholder. It's buildable land, but before it is rezoned to something else, most buildable land you'll see in the Golden Horseshoe is zoned rural. So it's almost like a placeholder. So in terms of the question, in terms of why do you need an exception or change, this is the type of placeholder zoning that is normally changed. And also, what was the other question? In terms of the other gentleman on 75 McClarty Gate, let me get your last name, but Greg, I believe. In terms of the municipality, we do receive development charges, and but as we have found, and most municipalities have found, growth doesn't pay for growth. So whatever development charges that we receive for the building of each lot or home, it really is put aside to provide services for that home over the period of the next, subsequent year. So it's not that we're going to be using that and use it for a totally different purpose to satisfy another need somewhere else in the municipality. So I just wanted to respond to that. And through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno, in reading one of the reports, I was under the understanding that one of the reasons why this little area here was not built out along with the rest of McClarty and Kane and Tonner was because it was part of the 2C lands in terms of the planning split. And so in terms of the cash in lieu and potential parkland dedication, that was amalgamated with the 2C lands. Am I incorrect in that assumption? I mean, that seems to be the case based on Councillor Thompson's question and your response to him.
Mr. Middle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I mean, as Mr. Given mentioned earlier on, there are 3 parcels here, and 2 of the parcels owned by the Prado developer and the Preserve were developers who developed within 2B. And these are what we call the remnant parcels, and they were just waiting for this last piece being Shimvest. Shimvest owned that parcel. Of course, they didn't have any development in 2B. They concentrated on the 2C development, so they finally, sort of mobilized, and the 3 developers have come together to finish off this development block. But all those 3 parcels are within the official plan, designated for residential development. As you pointed out, 2 have existing zoning on them that were approved a number of years ago when the 2C subdivisions were approved. That last Shimvest piece still has the old historic rural zoning, and so they actually require the rezoning to permit the residential lotting and development. But from an official plan standpoint, the 2B secondary plan, these 3 parcels were designated for residential development, similar to what we see in the rest of the 2B area to the west.
Okay, great. And my last question would be, in terms of the cash in lieu or the parkland dedication or allocation, would 5% is roughly, would you say 5% is 1 lot's worth? And if that's the case, can we use the 5% to maneuver in such a way that we can have a greater vista or an opening to the wildlife park?
Mr. Middle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the 3 parcels combined are approximately 5 acres in size. So, at 5%, if we were to take that as, as land taking to secure a piece of a park, it would be I have to do the math.
Quarter of an acre.
It's about a quarter of an acre. That's right. You're better than I am. Okay, I thought I was good. About a quarter of an acre. So that would be the amount that we could secure as parkland. And then we'd have to have some discussions with respect to, where exactly we would want that park to be located.
Thank you. And, okay, well, I mean, so we do have some wiggle room here in that we have about a quarter of an acre. We have, with the generosity of the builders, they're willing to give that 20 meters of that vista view. So I think combination of that, I think we can be creative and do something. And certainly, this is, my neighborhood too, because I live on Nicholas, and a lot of my friends do live on your street. And so this does impact me as well, and I do have a stake in this, and it is my desire to, see, some of the things that we discussed. So thank you.
Are you declaring now? Is that a declaration, Mr. Clerk? Councilor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to start off first and ask Mr. Ramuno through you about the parking and the construction of the parking of the vehicles and the construction going on when it gets to that point. And I understand that we do have a good construction management plan, and we do put it in place very well, and the developers for the most part do adhere to it. I think that my concerns, and I know I've mentioned to you many times in regards to many developments that are going on within the town, that it's not necessarily maybe the developer that's not adhering to our policies, it's the subtrades. And so what can we do to assure that they are adhering to our plan?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, the best thing we can do is to continue to establish a hotline, have that open line of communication with the developer. I mean, these three developers who we've done, who have done business in town before, and council, asked us to have a hotline established with Geranium. They have been very responsive, so I think it's just working with the applicants moving forward to ensure that, prior to construction, we sit down, we set our expectations, we establish that hotline, we have them dedicate one or a person, an engineer who's on call to deal with any concerns, that the public can call them directly or call us, and we'll have that open line to that person who will be able to address concerns as soon as they come up.
And through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, are there any penalties that could be put on because at the end of the day, if there's work going on a Sunday, what happens? I mean, it's great that there's a hotline to call and someone goes out and takes a look, but the people are still working on a Sunday. And so, is there any penalties? What's the recourse that the town can take?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, there are some penalties through our, bylaw enforcement division. They aren't very significant, but again, rather than sort of imposing those penalties, I think establishing that hotline and that relationship with the contractors and the engineers on site to ensure that we don't get to that point. And if it does happen once, that we're assured that those same issues won't come up again and again.
And thank you, and I appreciate that. And I think that's what we all look to strive for, is that if it does happen once, that it will not happen. It won't be a continuous occurrence, so I appreciate that. As far as the actual application in general, when this was before us in January, I wanted to see some changes when it came to those three lots up at the top, and I appreciate that they've provided that small vista and that small window. But I kind of like the thoughts of Councillor Thompson, where we can look into that cash in lieu of parkland and possibly flip it and open up a bigger space and a bigger area to address those concerns, which are my concerns as well as some of the residents. And I think if we have those conversations, we could get to that place that we could all be comfortable. But I think in the meantime, as Councillor Humphreys mentioned, and as some of the residents have mentioned, if the developer, the applicant, can meet with the residents and have an open dialogue and have those conversations while we work through looking at some of these possible changes that we could implement, then I think that would go a long way in our eyes as a council and also as a town and the residents. So I would appreciate it if the applicant would reach out to those residents and have a sit down with them.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I've asked Linda to put a slide on the screen. It comes from the report prepared by Malone Given Parsons. It's on page 2 of our report that we have in front of us. It's actually the one on the left. And so, through you to Mr. Ramuno. So, Mr. Ramuno, the way I read this history is that the Prado Estates piece and the Preserve Home Corporation piece were approved in 2002. And so, theoretically, could they move forward with that construction today without further approvals?
Mr. Moon?
To you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, those two parcels have zoning in place, and they also have, they're identified as blocks within a registered plan. They would need some further, they're just large blocks, so they would need a plan of subdivision to create the road and create those individual lots. So yes, they could proceed with a development application, plan of subdivision, just to subdivide the lots and establish the road.
And so, to some of the earlier comments, I mean, the reason why it hasn't moved forward is because they were waiting for the 2C development of the lands, which included Shimvest, and that's where we are here today. But, you know, based on the comments that we've heard from both the residences around the table, you know, to me, that's the starting point, is the 2002 plan that was proposed initially with the whole subdivision, whereby you look at the northern piece, and it was anticipated to be a park and be that gateway into the wildlife park. So I think maybe we look at the past to lead us ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I just pulled up the Wildlife Park report from Mark Setter. He was here about 2 years ago, I think. Does that sound right? And it's interesting, knowing my challenge with colors on color-coded maps, but it looks like pathing is up the east side of the Wildlife Park. And the Wildlife Park is kind of going up what would be the east side of the 2B subdivision. It's interesting that on the one map I'm looking at, the lotting is actually on the Mark Setter plan that we're looking at tonight. I'm sorry? I can take my iPad over. Kind of hard to see, a little fuzzy, but. You just want to check my color perception or lack of same. I'm sorry? It's not the best picture in the world, that's for sure. But you can see right there. I don't know, Michael, can you point out? No, you can't. Caitlin. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see it's very faint, but you can see the lotting that's pointed out there.
Yeah, you can see the
Yeah.
lotting up
Thanks,
there.
Caitlin. So I think the trail system is up the east side of the wildlife park, and I cannot remember. I was trying to find it. I cannot remember if there's a connection through there or not. I'd have to look at the.
It's actually in one of these attachments.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry, we missed that.
There's a trail attachment. So I just realized that. My apologies.
Thanks, Mike.
It's part of the presentation. I'll pull it up.
Is there actually a connection through that to the wildlife park? I didn't think that the wildlife park was verboten. No one could go in there.
I know, but we've got connections all over the place.
Oh, okay, so much for that. Got it. Oh, yeah. Caitlin, can you point out the trail connection there, Caitlin? Can you see it?
It's the
Yeah, I don't do red so well.
Yeah, the red line, if you just use the mouse, the red line.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, so there's three. Have you got it? Who's spoken? Yep. Okay, Councillor, are there any more questions, comments on this report? The motion is to move it then to a future GC. Sure. Councillor?
So the red lines with the arrows, what are those? Is the dotted line the trail?
Mr. Muno, can you help?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the red lines are the proposed trail access points throughout the system. The dotted line, I think that may refer to the floodplain line within the wetland feature. But the red lines represent our trail plan and implementation of the trail. So within this area, there are two possible connections. One being through the northern part of the existing storm pond, and the other connection would be again through this extension of the road, because there was a servicing easement that could be a trail connection. So there's potential for two connections there, identified in the trail plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Maracus, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramono. Mr. Ramono, if this goes to GC, we would still be able to have the conversations with the applicant in regards to the cash in lieu, the parkland, and also will the applicant have conversations with the residents. Will that still occur if we approve this to go to GC?
Sir.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, certainly. I'll take council's direction and I'll work with our park staff and the applicant with respect to securing parkland, and I will ask the applicant to see if they're willing to sit down with the residents and attendants and the community members to have a further discussion to explain their plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get that when the report does come to GC. We would get all that information in that report.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk, if you could call the vote, please.
Absolutely. A recorded vote's been requested for the single item for council public planning meeting tonight. Councillor Tom is absent. Councillor Gartner, how do you vote? Councillor Gartner votes no. Councillor Maracus? Councillor Maracus votes yes. Councillor Humphreys? Yes. Councillor Humphreys votes yes. Councillor Perry is away. Councillor Kim? Yes. Councillor Kim votes yes. Mayor Daw?
Yes.
Mayor Daw votes yes. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes, and Councillor Abel is absent. The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Again, I'll request anybody who wishes and not on the list already to make sure that they get the form from Linda and give us your contact information so we can make sure you stay in touch. Councillor, may I please have the confirming bylaw, please? Councillor Kim and Humphreys. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillors Thompson and Gartner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming out.